Two questions. One is that you didn't touch about disassembly, right? So there's some assumptions about disassembly which you will need for decompilation. So that's one problem. Then you mentioned correctness. It wasn't clear to me what correctness means, and is this a well-defined problem?
Awesome, thank you.
Of course, it's quite clear what incorrectness means.
I'm sorry?
It's quite clear what incorrectness means.
Yes, I got it.
Right?
Yeah, thank you. So very good questions, right? The first one that I didn't mention disassembly is that I only have an hour for this talk. With disassembly, I can easily push it to 2 hours. Right, so I went very fast about the CFD recovery. That's because usually disassembly is part of the CFD recovery process. And to your second question, I'm sorry? Yes, for sure, right? Let's say it's even harder if you have Rust or Go, right? But then they're all part of the CFD recovery. Yeah. So the second question is what. So I didn't give a definition of what correctness or incorrectness mean, right? That's because I really don't have that answer. And then, as far as I understand it, I believe correctness and incorrectness, they should be defined also according to the different applications there are, right? They can actually mean different things when you have different applications or when you require different characteristics for your decompilation. So I believe that's an open question. I would like to see a paper or some more research discussions on this topic in the future.
But you said that many people don't even talk about that.
Yeah, many people don't even talk about it. I agree with that. I think it's strange. Well, I'm being strange, but I think it's also strange that people don't even talk about whether it's correct or not in their papers. Of course, for anyone who wants to talk about it, they need to define it in the first place, right? I don't think there exists a definition in the field of decompilations in the past. So we need that decompilation in the first place, and then we can talk about, how can we evaluate it? How can we evaluate according to that metric? So, any more questions from the audience?
Okay, Jim has a question.
Mm-hmm. There's a mic.
Just real short because I'm old. First decompiler was written and published in 1960. There were a couple of dissertations, I know, at least in the 80s, if not even in the 70s in decompilation. So it's been going on for a lot longer. That's it.
Yes. I agree with what you said. I don't think, so as far as I know, I don't think those papers are actually about binary decompilation. Like, they weren't going from C, as far as I know. They weren't going from binaries that are compiled from C. Correct.
Okay, Fish, you'd like to answer a couple of questions? Okay.
Awesome. So Malachi asked, what do you think about using machine learning to learn what weights in your feature vector of a function binary? Then you can apply those weights using local sensitive hashing. That way you still get the speed, and then you are using the ML to get the weights. I think it's a reasonable idea that people should try. I believe that's a good idea, right? But then do I know if this is going to work or not? I have no idea. Maybe it's going to work to some extent. PX's question. I agree that tools aren't bug-free, but how do you propose to compare and approach differently? I don't see any other way to compare two approaches than using the implementation of those techniques. Do you have any suggestions? Yes, I think that's a very good question. So one thing that you can do is that, what if we don't limit our implementation to only one tool, but we can implement the same technique on different tools? Right, that's one solution. The other suggestion that I have is, we actually have open and widely used tools, right? For example, I would say Anger is one of those widely used tools. IDA is another one, right? You want to use existing tools instead of re-implementing a decompiler from scratch by yourself, right? I've seen grad students who really enjoy writing lifter from ground up, and then build the lifting pipeline, and then CFD recovery, and then variable analysis, and then restructuring, and then finally they have a decompiler. Not only is that going to be like several years of work, right? But also most people just start at the step of implementing lifters. It's very satisfying, but then you also don't get very far on science, right? So my suggestion would be reuse as much as possible that's available from the existing community. Sergey's comment, while noted on the drawbacks of dwarf, of course, dwarf has not yet gotten the mind share of the major function of representing inferred knowledge about a binary, but then it's notable for acquiring a second major function of exception handling, so perhaps it could acquire a third. I totally agree with that, right? I'm not saying we should not use dwarf. I'm just saying dwarf as it is right, or it's actually not a problem for dwarf. It's more about how this surrounding ecosystem about using dwarf, right? I don't think the ecosystem is there yet. We are fully committed to pushing dwarf to its nice future that will have future extensions, future function that will support storing, representing inferred knowledge about binaries.